All right, a few people joined in, so I think it's time to start. Welcome everyone. Second event of the very new Stretch Meetup. This is the Stretch Leadership Meetup, which is kind of like a new thing. It's from the Leadership Meetup Budapest and the Stretch Conf Meetup editions. And this is also the last meetup for the summer season because, you know, we are having the football games right now and everyone is going for a well-deserved vacation after the long lockdown period. But after the break, we are going back with new meetups and also with a new conference. So stay with us. We have a new organizer team and we have lots of great ideas for the future. And today we are going to have two amazing speakers and we will learn about the challenges of remote working and also the traps of metric. And with that said, please welcome Balázs from Educate Business.
Hey, how are you? Can you see me well, hear me well?
I can see you.
Wonderful.
I think the guests can see you as well.
All right, let me share my screen as well. So you might see it. So welcome everyone. My name is Balázs and I'm working as an agile coach at Educate Hungary. And what we are going to talk about today is how to use metrics, especially performance metrics, and what are the typical traps that you can step into when you are using, when you are measuring your team performance, when you are measuring certain product metrics, when you are measuring anything in your team or regarding to the team performance. I would like to highlight that these are just inspirations, so your context may be different, and I'm quite open to a Q&A, so if you have any question, just please raise your questions and I will try to answer those as well. So a little bit about myself. As I just mentioned, I'm working as an agile coach, and in the past 10 years, I was supporting agile teams in small, medium, and large enterprises as well. So I've faced different challenges in different organizations, product organization, product organization, service organizations, anything like that. So please feel free to ask anything regarding these topics. So, and the topic is metrics and what are the typical traps that you can step into. So let's see. Let's start with the first one, and I think one of the most important trap that you can step into is not having a clear why, not having a clear purpose why you are measuring something. As you can see this golden circle here, inspired by Simon Sinek. One, you should start with the why. Whether you are measuring velocity, lead time, any product metrics or quality, it is the first thing that you should highlight. Not only why you are measuring it, but exactly what is the correlation? What is your goal with that specific measurement? What are some reasons that are typically wrong reasons to measure something? For example, I would inspire everyone that you should only measure something when you would like to get to know better, you want to learn about certain topics, and not using metrics as goals. And of course, if you are paying the cost of certain measurements, some measurements, some metrics cost you very little, some cost you very much resource, a lot of resource, and you should be aware why you are actually measuring. So that's the first step. I found a lot of organization make and a mistake that they are making, and I think what you should do is to find out how it can improve your learning, how those measurements can give you better insights, how you can learn from it. So that's number one. And I think one of the most important things is to have a clear purpose on why you are measuring something. The second one is distortion. What do I mean by distortion? Whether you are just measuring one thing or whether you are using balanced metrics, distortion is kind of should be always in your attention. And two effects I would like to highlight here. One is that the so-called observer effect, which is also known as Hawthorne effect, after the Hawthorne studies. Basically, in the 1930s, Alton Mayo was making these studies about how certain conditions in a factory can increase the team performance. And they watched the lighting, whether if they give certain workers more light, is it affecting the performance? And actually what they found is that it actually do. So the more lights they give to the certain the workers, the examined workers, the better they perform. So of course, and nobody for a second thought that it is because of the light, but it's highlighted this observer effect, that if you pay attention and if the workers of the factory see that they are observed and evaluated and measured, they would like to they are adjusting their behavior to that certain measurement, or their certain perception, what they think the observers are required from them or expecting from them. And that leads us to the other adage, which is the Goodhart's law, which is when a measure becomes the target, it ceases to be a good measure, which means when you are setting a measurement for a target, people will find the way to optimize their performance, and maybe they find ways that you don't want them to find, and maybe they find shortcuts you don't want them. It doesn't necessarily mean that the actual performance or the actual outcome, what we would like to achieve, is achieved. If we are measuring only one or two things, you just see this joke here. If you would like to, if you're setting, for example, average call time in a call center as a metric or as a goal, they will find a way to, you are setting this because you have an agenda that it might improve the customer experience, but it might lead to the opposite effect. So it might hurt the customer experience as well. So make sure beware what you are actually measuring, and be aware of this distortion effects. So basically, a Hawthorne effect or the observer effect says that if you are paying attention to something, if you are paying attention to someone's performance, the performance will rise, but this not necessarily means it is a good overall achievement for you. The third trap I would like to emphasize is not really adjusting the how. Let's say you are measuring your velocity, or measuring your lead time, or measuring certain feature usage. You might, just as in Goodhart's law, you might find ways that are not necessarily giving you a better results, but I mean, better results in a way that you might achieve your statistical goals or numeric goals, but you might not achieve your agenda, whether it be better customer experience, faster time to market, and so on. So what you really need to do is, when you've set your goal that you want to learn from certain metrics, you are aware that these metrics, if you are using too few, or if you're making them goal, and especially if you're using, and if you are incentivizing your team based on that goal, they'll find a way. They find different ways to solve those problems. And what you need to do is continuously reflect on those ways and continuously adjust the way how you are achieving those goals. That was trap. That was the third trap. The fourth, and kind of the fifth, the fourth trap is when you are optimizing locally. So what does it mean? Optimizing locally, whether you are using a so-called shared resources, or more teams are using one person's knowledge, one person's time, attention, anything it could be, and you would like to maximize it, and therefore others will have less of that resource. So it might be good for you in the short term, and it's good for you for the team, but the overall goal for the overall organization, it might not lead you better actual results, better organizational health, better customer metrics, and so on. So you should keep in mind that team can only be fast as much as the ecosystem around it enables them to be, which means that most of the times in an organization, teams are not, most of the times they are not truly end-to-end. So when we are talking about a, 5-person startup, they are kind of truly end-to-end in a way that they get a request, they have an idea, and they can implement it, and all the steps regarding to that implementation belongs to that specific teams. Therefore, when you are optimizing locally, you are optimizing for your whole organization. But when the organization scales, any optimization what you do locally might get resources from other teams, or maybe it can be that it will be not helpful at all, because when you are, for example, responsible, your team is responsible for development, but the release is another step in the process, or there are other steps in the process. So there will be a bottleneck in the flow. So you should be aware when you have your goal, that when you have your why, you should also check, do I optimizing locally or only locally, or do I optimizing for the whole organization? And also keep in mind that short-term short-term, keep in mind that you should balance between short-term gains and long-term gains as well. So these are the two. Maybe it can give you little improvements in the short term, but in the long term, it might hurt you. So number 4, optimizing locally and optimizing for the short term. Number 5, comparing teams. When we are in an organization with multiple teams, we tend to use certain metrics across the board. And when we use certain metrics across the board, for example, velocity, lead time, cycle time, mean to recovery, or test coverage, anything. It can be anything. You are kind of the apple to oranges comparison, and I always highlight to any manager who would like to have a competition between teams. So they think that this kind of competition might lead to a better performance, but actually most of the times it is not. And most of the time it hurts performance, and you don't really have the same basics. You don't have the same teams. The teams are with different setups, with different conditions, different contexts. So as I said, these are just inspirations. Maybe there are some contexts, some circumstances where you can, and it is beneficial to compare certain teams. But most of the times, I would say it's a huge trap to compare teams and keep in mind the long-term consequences of that comparison as well. All right, but what do we do now? So these are a lot of traps. Should we measure at all after all these traps? Or should we be afraid that we will make mistakes? And maybe you think of, oh, maybe I shouldn't measure at all. Or maybe I should just focus on things and not using this data-driven approach, let's say. But I would say there are some things that you can do. And one of the things is that you use, for example, if you want to avoid distortion. Now, of course, you cannot really avoid completely. So that's fools around. That you cannot really completely avoid the distortions. But what you can do is to have competing metrics or balanced metrics. Let's have a system of metrics that if some distortions happens, for example, if we are measuring how fast we are going, and if we are actually paying attention to it, we should see whether it hurts or how does it affect our quality, or how does it affect, if we are paying attention to quality and speed, how does it affect if we are working on the right thing? So these are just one 3-dimensional model. You can use anything. This is just one example. You can use, for example, like financial metrics, people metrics, product metrics or customer metrics. So very similar to that, but there are other certain things aspects that you can categorize and measure. The goal here, or the agenda here, is to not only measure what you want to be approved, but also measure what you don't want to be decreased or decline. So in this case, you pick certain dimensions, and actually what you are doing is putting these competing metrics together and not viewing certain metrics alone. And this helps you avoiding a little bit of the distortion effect. Let's see what we have here. So when we are building at the right speed, but not focusing on building building a thing right, so we're focusing on quality and focusing on speed, we might have a limited customer focus. When we are focusing on building the right thing, so focusing on the product, on the customer, focusing on the markets, and building the thing right, so building quality, you might, and if you are not paying attention to your speed, you might lose market opportunities. And of course, if you are not paying attention to quality, might lead to a poor quality. Maybe it's quite good products, quite what customers want. Maybe you are building fast enough. What I'm saying, when you are trying to measure certain things, use these balance metrics, and you can use any other dimensions as well. Just to name a few, so these are when I'm talking about building the right thing, just some examples. And of course, there are a lot of product people here who knows this better than me. So just to give you an example, few examples, building the right thing, you can measure net promoter score. There are, of course, advantages and disadvantages to all of this. So you can measure net promoter score, new sales, churn rates, certain feature usage, or what Sean Ellis, the early advisor of growth advisor of Dropbox and LogMeIn as well, if you know his name, he was actually measuring product market fit in a way that he asked the users that how would you feel if you could no longer use, and I'm sharing this because I think this is quite a good metric, or quite an insightful metric. How would you feel? So you asked your customers, how would you feel if you could no longer use our product? And if the answer is very disappointed, or your answers mainly are very disappointed, that can indicate that you have a product market fit. It says the magical number is around 40%. So if 40% of your users saying they would be very disappointed if you could no longer use your product, that's a good indicator that you have a product market fit. Of course, there are other aspects, like whether we are building on speed, team velocity you can use. There are a lot of disadvantages of using team velocity, and I'm happy to talk about it. Lead time, flow efficiency, or the cumulative flow diagram, it's huge. I would recommend everyone to use it instead of lead time or velocity. Lead time and flow efficiency, I would say these are the two most important speed metrics, in my opinion. And of course, when we are talking about quality, you can check escape defects, user complaints, mean time to recovery. And what this model, and that's why I'm saying this is only one aspect, one system that you can build. This model is not paying attention to actual team health or team joy, which can be maybe you are building the right product, maybe you building the thing right, maybe you're building at the right speed, but your team might be overloaded or burnout. So there are certain aspects I just wanted to highlight, or maybe financial things can be some aspects that you would measure. So there is no perfect system. but you can avoid distortion using balance metrics. That's my message here. So, 2, avoid those traps. I have some recommendations for you. Just to summarize, always be very clear about why you are measuring certain things and use them. Use balance metrics together. So build a system, what you just saw. Watch for trends and not single data points. That makes it more easier for you to learn. You can learn from trends, but it's really, especially if we are talking about lagging indicators, like your body weight is a lagging indicator of your eating habits. When we are talking about lagging indicators, they give you very, very little information about your overall health. But if you watch the trends, it can give you more insights. And if you watch certain metrics together, the trends of certain metrics together, you might find correlations or might find causations as well. You should not only measure outputs, but you can use kind of leading indicators. Just as I mentioned, your body weight might be a lagging indicator of your eating habits. You can measure certain things. What you can do, for example, you can measure that, every day I'm going to run X number of miles or X kilometers. So if you measure certain system activities, that might also help you. If you are not only measuring the outputs or the outcomes, but you are measuring you want to actually build your system, and therefore it can give you information. And the key is here, and the key here is to get information and to make it more tangible. And don't compare teams. Just don't. And the last one is what I see is a common mistake, is when we are looking at the product market fit or certain customer or product metrics, when we are looking at the right speed and stellar performance, and when we are looking at the quality, even there can be a burnout team. So pay attention to team health and team happiness. And thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Please feel free to ask it either in the chat or in the QA section. Oh, there is one in the QA section, actually. We would like to have teams with more predictable results. What measurements do you suggest?
We would like to have more predictability, more predictable results. I would say that results and this might be two different questions, but when we're talking about predictability, I think and the variable and not predictable velocity, let's say. Velocity is a poor measurement or poor metrics to track this. I would say there are certain things that are causing you, and we would like to not measuring the symptoms and not looking at the symptoms, because not predictable or variable delivery is a symptom. You should check the root causes. Typical root causes can be blocked time. So the team is blocked. So you should measure how much the team is blocked that one thing you can do. You can do and watch out what are the dependencies, how the dependencies maps out beforehand, before we start. Is there any unknown dependencies? Are we depending on different teams? This is the second major thing, I think, why team performance are unpredictable, delivery is unpredictable. The third thing I would like to highlight, to focus on, is basically use smaller stories, because smaller stories will lead you better understanding of certain stories. Or if you might give estimation, you might want to improve your estimation, of course, but when you are estimating something, before you have a confidence that you can really estimate, or you can confidently estimate those certain things, that can lead to this variability. So I would say use smaller stories, or work on the story composition. And if you have any, if you're not confident enough to estimate, you can use spikes as well. So spikes are basically research stories, what time-boxed research tasks, what you can do to eliminate risk and get more certainty about how you want to solve certain problems. So I would focus on these. Of course, you can measure blocked time, but that might give you the symptom, and you measure the symptom, but you want to find out the root cause. So first I would start with finding the root cause, and then measure system activities, what we are doing to actually achieve those goals. They can be smaller stories, less dependencies, more understanding, more spikes, more understanding on the stories, and more spikes. And that's it. And of course, a lot of other things, but I hope I answered it.
So, thank you. There is one more question, which is, what will be the most simple or easy measurement you would suggest to start using?
Team happiness. Team happiness, yeah, it's quite compact, and I would say you should talk to your people. I really like if you are searching agile health check. Basically, you have 10 dimensions. There are certain templates for that, but you actually map out or define certain dimensions. For example, health or code base, how speed of delivery, certain dimensions, and you actually just rate from 1 to 10, or you just red, yellow, or green, and that give you a good insight what's happening in the team. So I would not start with velocity, not start with lead time. If you really want to measure, I would suggest that you should use a balanced metric system, and you should use 5 basic metrics. You should look at some feature usage if you are working on a product. You should look at lead time. It's a speed metric, lead time. Take a look at cumulative flow. You should watch for quality. It can be test coverage, but do not make it a goal. And yeah, that's for start.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
That was a bit.
I think we don't have any more questions. Let me just check out the chat as well. No, we don't have no new questions. Balázs, once again, thank you very much for your talk. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you. And please welcome Tamás Palóci from Deutsche Telekom, who is our next speaker. Bye-bye.